Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here in our quaint little studio. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. I'm joined, not in studio today, he's remote off at the observatory, writer, director, producer, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
Well, John, I'm a little tired. I saw a little 3 hour and 15-minute movie, and it took me 180 miles to get there and back.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that little movie as we're gonna start off the show. But I'm gonna start off with just a couple of little housekeeping items, guys. Once again, we have our Adopt a Family Christmas program going on right now. If you guys want to contribute, you guys already bought everything that was on the list. You guys bought the what do you call it? The Meta Quests. You guys bought the tablets. Guys bought the scooters and the games and the clothes and all that kind of stuff. But there are still Amazon gift cards there, and believe me, Amazon gift cards for a mom who still has to get more things for their kids or maybe some things for themselves. There are still a bunch of Amazon gift cards there. I think we've sold like 72 of them. They're $10 each. We want to sell like 250 of them. So you'll find a link right at the top of this video in the description of going to our wish list on Amazon. Go and select and pick up one or two or three or 10 or 20 of those Amazon gift cards for our adoptive family this Christmas. Also, this coming Tuesday, don't forget, guys, the next installment of our movie meetup is happening. We are going to be doing the 7:10 p.m. screening in Burbank, California at the AMC Burbank 16. Again, the 7:10 p.m. screening of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. If you want to come and be a part of the movie meetup, it's just really casual and simple. Go to AMC's website, buy a ticket to that 7:10 p.m. screening of it at the AMC Burbank 16, and then we'll just all, watch the movie there together, and then I'll hang out outside of the theater afterwards to meet people and take pictures and things like that. All right, guys, with that down, we got a lot of things to cover here today. Well, not really, but we've got a few. One big thing. The massive thing, obviously, is the Netflix winning the bid to buy Warner Brothers. We are not going to cover that first, but we will get to it quickly. I just want to make sure this is a big story. I want to make sure people who are going to be latecomers to the episode today get here. But we're going to start off with something almost equally as important, which is, Rob, last night, you had a chance, my friend, to go and watch a movie I know you've been very excited about, Avatar: Fire and Ash. We don't want you to give away any spoilers or anything, but give us your thoughts. What did you think of Avatar: Fire and Ash now that you've seen it?
Well, first of all, I've got to preface this by saying I loved the first Avatar. I think as far as a fantasy film, science fiction film, and in terms of its realization and what it was trying to do, A plus. And I thought Way of Water, which Way of Water is really the first part of Fire and Ash. They're basically one movie, and it was too much movie, so they cut it in half. And I would suggest everybody go see or familiarize themselves with Way of Water, because Fire and Ash takes place really right after that movie is over, and there's a lot of things that happen. But long story short, I thought this film was yet another stunning achievement in the Avatar series. In a way, if this means anything, I think it's the Rocky 3 of Avatar movies, if that makes any sense. But I loved it. And I saw it in high frame rate and 3D at the Directors Guild of America. I can't imagine a better presentation of this film. It did not feel like 3 hours and 15 minutes. I was locked in from the opening. It explores more of the world of Pandora, and it has some really interesting, really compelling ideas. And I think after seeing this, I know if James Cameron gets to make Avatars 4 and 5, I think I know exactly where he's going with it. And it involves Earth and Awa, but that's just a theory. But I do think this film is a staggering achievement. There's a lot of people that might not. I understand this is not a cool franchise. The technology and everything is cool, but it's very old-fashioned, and it really has American values of the family and home and hearth and being that way, and there's a lot more of it. There's some really interesting questions that are posed for the Sully family. Um, I was enchanted by the whole thing. Obviously, it does repeat beats of Avatar: Way of Water, quite a few actually, but it felt to me like both of these movies are part of the same symphony. and it's telling this, larger story. And I loved every minute of watching it. It is, however, I think the most imperfect of all three of the Avatar films, only because there's so much story here, and they keep adding characters and adding people. They keep bringing back people from the past, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot these people were in this movie." And I'm sure they had a hard time putting this all together, but sometimes I felt that was a little jarring when suddenly in the back half of the film, you're reintroducing these characters that have been part of the franchise since the beginning, and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute." But there are some moments in this movie that are it filled me with awe and wonder. Which is what Avatar does best. We've seen in the trailers these big airships. Those are a new group of people. Again, I wish that we saw more of them. They're only in the first part of the film, and it was an incredible sequence. But the people of Pandora are more fully developed. They have more. We see more of the tribe. Well, we have different tribes and different people, and I would like to have spent more time with them. But this movie was 4 hours. I still would have loved it. Now, the Mordor Na'vi that I was really looking forward to are really awesome. They're incredible, and, their leader is very incredible. I just wished that we spent more time with them. Like, I really wanted them to do they could have done how Jake Sully in the first movie spends time with Neytiri and learns the Na'vi culture. I kinda wish that another character, which you'll see, got to experience that with them. Just because they were so badass. I mean, the villains in Way of Water and in this are a little mustache twirling. I freely admit that. And the only other thing I really missed was James Horner's score. I love that Avatar theme when it kicks in. I don't think it did enough, especially in emotional moments, which that isn't that much of a criticism. At the screening last night, Miley Cyrus spoke afterwards, and she does the end credit song, and she was kind of funny saying, "I asked James Cameron about 10 years ago if I could participate, and he called me, like, a month ago." So, that was pretty funny. He's like, "What, you haven't been doing this for 20 years?" So she was very funny. She's an incredible speaker. I was very impressed by
Let me
her.
let me ask you this, Rob. Having watched this film now, Avatar, the original film, is now, I don't know what, 75 years old. I can't
Yeah.
remember how long ago the first one came out. How do the visual effects hold up today? How does it look visually now compared to the way it's looked before? Is it still kind of shock and awe-inspiring? Is it still all
It
that?
it was. It's stunning. Like, the level of stuff that happens in this movie it's just jaw-dropping. There was a lot of shots where they were going in and out of the water, so the camera was using the camera lens, there'd be water floating in the middle of the camera lens, and you saw someone's feet down, and then it would go. I mean, I know they did shoot motion capture in the water, but it was like they were adding the camera. They could have just taken that out and not had it happen. But every time it happened, I'm like, this is amazing. It's just because none of it's real. And I think there's a lot of talk about why isn't this pop culture why does it not have a footprint in pop culture? Well, as you've said, John, movies are experiential events. And as I was sitting there last night, I kept thinking about your words, and I'm like, there is no better experiential event in a movie theater than the Avatar movies. That's
Mm.
what they are. I was sitting there and I was seeing this in high frame rate. And the thing about a lot of people didn't like high frame rate with The Hobbit because they're like, oh, it looks like a soap opera.
Yeah, yeah.
But in the case of Pandora, none of it's real. So we don't have anything to sort of key on to. So the high frame rate really works. And it's this kind of this hyper real. I think in the version I saw, I think there's actually variable frame rates, and I would really like to read the American Cinematographer article on this. But it was just stunning. I mean, it was from the time the 20th Century Fox and Lightstorm logo on. I'm like, oh, this is a high frame rate. Let's go. And then it opens with this scene to reacquaint you with the world, and I was just my jaw was on the floor. And to be honest, even though like Way of Water, the end of it gets pretty long, there's so much going on and so much awe and wonder, and they really add to the mythology of what's going on with Pandora. And as I was sitting there, I have a theory. I think that James Cameron is trying to convey to us that Pandora is the world that we, the Earth, would have evolved into if we didn't fall out of balance, if humanity did not fall out of balance with its natural surroundings. Because clearly, as they extend what we know about how Awa or how the planet itself works, and there's a lot of really interesting Pandoran biology in this. Like, there's a scene where a group of people come together to talk about what's about to go down. It, it, it was unbelievable. The conversation was, and they do something visually with the water. I was just sitting there going, "This is amazing." Like, I felt like I was in the presence of awe. The same, it approached, I wouldn't say it does exactly the same stuff, but it approaches that awe that when the sandworm shows up in Dune. I mean, I
Right.
think that these movies together, obviously, people are not going to buy in to these movies the way they buy into Dune, and I'll tell you why. Dune's about people, and the people in this movie, the human beings, feel out of place.
Mm.
And so the main characters, like Jake Sully, is awesome, but he's not cool. Like, I want to be Han Solo, but I don't want to be Jake Sully. And I think that has something to do with the thing about, I mean, to be honest, I'd love to be a Na'vi, to be honest, I would. But there is a wholesomeness to this that I think prevents it from making people, especially our age, love it.
I got to
I
ask you
love
this then, because I know we got to move on to some other topics here,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we got to get to the Netflix thing. But let me ask you this. The folks over at 20th Century give you a call and they say, we want a quote from Robert Meyer Burnett to put on the poster. What's the Robert Meyer Burnett quote for this movie?
I would probably say something to the effect of, in a world where awe and wonder are at a premium, Avatar Fire and Ash delivers something along those lines. I'd have to think about that. But something to the effect of that Avatar Fire and Water delivers awe and wonder, the likes you haven't seen. I don't know. I have to think about it. You're putting me on the spot to come up with
But
something
basically,
good.
you liked it.
I did like it. I do, but it's I would say this. It is imperfect of all the 3 Avatar movies. I'm going to go with my Rocky 3 quote. But I think there was probably too much movie, and they do some editorial things that I think are a little odd, and I think the structure is a little off. It's not perfect. But as far as an experiential movie event, it's done what the other 2 Avatar movies do. I sat there with my jaw on the floor. I had no idea what was going to happen next. They keep doing things that I thought were really, really interesting. And I give it my highest recommendation. No one is attempting to do what James Cameron is doing. And yes, all the criticisms that people have leveled at the movie are there. It is very repetitive, but I don't care. I was enchanted and awed.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. The question is for you guys, where are your expectation levels like right now for Avatar Fire and Ash? It looks and sounds like it delivers on that big grand scale. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? A show that I at first did not care too much about, but I have gradually, slowly, but surely been getting more and more interested in it, is the new Game of Thrones series, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Now, they dropped a trailer for it a little while ago, and it looked pretty good. Well, now they have dropped what they are calling the final trailer. Of course, this thing debuts in mid-January, so it's coming out soon. Had a chance to watch this trailer. So Rob, let me go over to you first on this. You watched the trailer too. What did you think about this trailer? Has it done anything to increase your excitement for the show? Are you excited about it at all? How are you feeling about it?
I've been excited since what we saw first. Now, this trailer put me over the top with it. I can't wait to see this show. You know what, John? There was a little bit of that Dungeons and Dragons vibe that we loved so much in that movie.
Yeah.
And not everything, again, the story of Game of Thrones was about the end of the world. It was apocalyptic. But I've always been fascinated by what's daily life like in Westeros. And everything about this trailer I thought was wildly entertaining. I can't wait to see this. And I think in terms of making different kinds of shows inside the Seven Kingdoms, House of the Dragon is essentially similar to Game of Thrones, but this shows that you can tell a much different story that has an entertainment level that's very different, that is, dare I say it, really fun to watch without incest and murder and dragons, even though you've got that probably too. But I thought this trailer was great, and I can't wait to see the show.
You know what the trailers have really done for me? They've made me really get interested in this lead character, Dunk. I mean, Egg comes across as really fun and really funny too. But the whole like little things like, how good of a knight are you? You'll see. And then he starts to walk out and he goes the wrong way. It was a very Steve Carell kind of moment, right? He goes, nope, it's this way. So I like the fact that they're kind of balancing in this, this Game of Thrones heaviness and seriousness, but they're also bringing in a little bit of a different note as well, a little bit of a lighter note at the same time. And then you get, lest you think it's too light, he's like, there's that scene in the trailer where he's sitting on the horse. It's like, has there no honor left in the noble houses of Westeros and stuff like that? Like, I just thought it was great. Then it looks like in the trailer that it starts very small scale, and the trailer seems to suggest that it gets very large scale by the time we're going to get closer to the end of this thing. Yes. And again, look, the purpose of a trailer, we say this all the time, whether it's for a movie or for a TV show, the whole purpose of a trailer is to take our excitement level, our enthusiasm level, wherever it's at, no matter how big or small, it's supposed to take it and bump it up a bit. And the trailers have been doing that for me, and this one especially. I'm not going to say, Rob, that I'm as looking forward to this as I am for the next season of House of the Dragon. Like, especially knowing like where things are going to be going for House of the Dragon now. Like I love that show. I cannot wait for this. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm as excited for it, but I've gotten a lot more excited for this one than I have been. And part 100%. Of the reason, Rob, is because it also looks like it's clearly in the same world as House of the Dragon, about 100 years removed or 70 years removed, whatever. But it's in the same world, yet it feels very distinct and unique. Like, yes. What do you notice the differences between like what we've got in House of the Dragon and how this one looks so far?
Well, tone. I mean, that was my biggest one. It feels like that there's more of an adventuring aspect to this, more of a coming of age story where it's focusing on one person as opposed to different factions that were bouncing around. So you're going to see this one man's journey through the world as he has his young squire and, of course, call it the sidekick, the short round, the Chewbacca, whatever's this kid, his squire. And it seems to me that it isn't like life is an adventure as opposed to being constantly at war. And I feel that the spirit of this is very different, and it harks back to more, adventure movies, as opposed to being movies about war and destruction.
All right, guys, question is for you. Did you have a chance to see this new trailer for the Game of Thrones series, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? I admit I was not very interested in this at first, but I have gotten interested in this. I actually can't wait for this show to start. Whatever you guys thought about it, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's talk about this for a second, shall we? We've been talking about House of Asher, the new Spartacus series on Starz, which right up until last night, I didn't even know how to watch anything on Starz. And how many people don't know how to watch Starz? Well, I'll give you a guess. See, House of Spartacus right now is still today holding 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. There are 12 reviews. I mean, all from mostly from very high profile outlets, The Wrap, Variety Magazine, CRB. Like, there are many big outlets that are covering it, and they all like it and they all love it. But like, that just kind of shows you how nobody has Starz and like nobody watches Starz, because even though it aired last night, there's still only like about 12 reviews of the things out there. But you guys know that I loved the original Spartacus series. It's in my top 5 all-time favorite shows. And Rob, you and I have been talking the last couple of days about some of the interviews going on about the fact that Stephen S. DeKnight, the showrunner, who was the showrunner of the original Spartacus and the showrunner of Daredevil season 1 on Netflix. He was talking about how, yeah, man, no boundaries for me when it comes to gore, violence, and sex. I pushed the limits. I thought they would give me notes, but Lionsgate said, nope, you're good. Do whatever you want to do. Well, Rob, last night, I didn't know it dropped. I thought it dropped today, but it dropped, I guess, around midnight. I signed up for Starz, and I watched the first 2 episodes, those are the only ones that are out right now, of Spartacus, the House of Asher. And I will tell you this. Number 1, it's great. I really like it. I'm not going to say I like it as much as the original Spartacus, but I'll tell you this. The first 2 episodes of House of Asher are much better than the first 2 episodes of the original Spartacus series, because quite frankly, even though I love it and it's in my all-time top 5, the first 2 episodes of Spartacus weren't all that good. They were quite bad, actually. So it started off stronger, but it's great. And oh my God, when he tells us that they're really pushing the limits of what you can get away with, gore, violence, sex, and everything on TV, he wasn't kidding. He wasn't kidding at all. This thing is brutal and bloody and gory and titillating and sexy and sexual, and it's just all this kind of stuff. And Rob, you remember how you and I were talking about that, stuff stops being gratuitous if you give it purpose and if it serves the atmosphere and the feel of the story, right? No big surprise. They did tons of this in the original Spartacus, so I'm not giving anything away. But there's this big orgy scene going on in the Ludus, right? Where like the gladiators, their doctore Asher brings in a bunch of whores, ale, wine, and whores for the men, right? And there's this savage orgy scene going on. But as I'm watching, I'm like, this is really highlighting the atmosphere of the Ludus. About, you feel the angst of these gladiators, like getting out all this pent up energy out at the same time. Like, so it was sexy and sultry, but it also served the story and it moved it ahead. And I don't know if you remember this, Rob, but Stephen S. DeKnight said that there's particularly a scene in episode 2 that I really thought I was going to get some pushback from the networks. So like I was ready to cut it because I was sure I was going to get pushback from the networks. Remember he said that? Okay, guys, this is the only spoiler I'm going to give you. This is the only spoiler I'm going to give you. Okay. So as long as this picture is up, you might want to mute your computer. I'm going to give one spoiler away. Okay. Here it is. When he said he really thought he was going to get pushback from the network, I am shocked that what he did in this scene actually made it into the broadcast. Because here's what happens. The main character is Asher, but in his quest to find some brand new spectacle for the arena that the crowd has never seen, the crowd is yearning for something new, he finds this woman that he names Achillea. And anyway, he brings her into the Ludus. And of course, the male gladiators aren't so thrilled to have her there, and they beat the crap out of her a lot. And in this one scene, two of the gladiators decide they're going to rape her. And as they start to, she's fighting back. And she gets the upper hand. And it literally ends, the scene ends with her having a guy naked on his knees and she's behind him. And she reaches down and grabs his... Do you have music playing, Rob, by the way? I think I hear music in the background. Anyway, literally reaches down, grabs his balls and his dick, full camera shot, not off camera, full camera shot, and literally rips his balls and dick off and is like holds them in her hands like this as he like bleeds out. And then like, I believe she then shoves his own dick up his ass. And I'm like watching this and I'm going, oh my God, it is one of the most disturbing, crazy, graphic things I have ever seen. And it was hilarious, but gruesome and disturbing and all that kind of stuff. But man, that's the show. That's the show. And you know what's best about the show, Rob? Here's what's best about the show.
It sounds all good to me.
One of the things that I loved about the original Spartacus was the dialogue. The dialogue, it's like this very vulgar Shakespearean. Oh, that Jupiter would cease parting my lips to insert cock. Like just lines like, where are you going to hear lines like that in anything? But the whole, it's spoken in this eloquent Shakespearean kind of verbiage, but it's incredibly graphic and also incredibly vulgar. It's just everything. And yes, it delivers tons of sex and tons of nudity and tons of violence and all that kind of stuff. But within all of that is the setup for a great story with great characters. And I really like it. I will tell you the one thing that I don't like about the show. And this will be the second little story. This is just, what I'm about to tell you is literally something that happens in the first 2 minutes, okay? This is just for the setup. It's the first 2 minutes. You're not going to have anything wasted for you if you see this in the first 2 minutes. But if you've watched the original Spartacus, you might be asking yourself, how can this be the house of Asher? They cut off Asher's head in Spartacus. He got beheaded for being a conniving little Weasley snake, and they cut his head off. So the way they start the show, the very first scene is Asher wakes up in some kind of Roman purgatory, and standing in front of him is the also dead, who played Xena Warrior Princess?
Lucy Lawless.
Lucy Lawless, who is, of course, the wife of the Doctore in the original Spartacus series. And she's standing there in front of him, and she basically gives him this spiel that, what if you never did this? And what if you weren't slain? The gods are sending you back to see what your life would have been like if you didn't die that day.
Done.
And
I'm in.
I thought, I'll be honest with you, I thought that was kind of cheap. I would have almost preferred if it was just a title on the screen that says, what if Asher didn't die? But instead they set up this whole thing where the Roman gods have sent him, the gods of the underworld have sent him back to live out his life as if he didn't die.
Love it.
But whatever, once that gets rolling, I'm telling you, man, this show rocks. It's exciting. It's violent. It's sexy. It's like all the stuff I was hoping that this show could be. Now, look, the reality is, Rob, nobody's going to watch it. Nobody's going to watch it. It's on Stars, and nobody's got Stars. By the way, I'm not trying to bad talk Stars here at all. And by the way, this guy in the picture with Asher, he's Asher's the Doctore, and the other guy is, I forget what the guy, he's like the head boss of the gladiators. And I can't remember what they call him. Anyway, so he works for Asher, and he's great. The dynamic between these two characters, Asher, who is the Doctor, he's the boss of the whole thing, and then this guy is his main guy who trains the gladiators for him. Their dynamic and their chemistry are awesome. Awesome chemistry between these guys. I love it. I got to tell you, Rob, I'm very happy with the show. Again, I'm not going to put it on the same level as the original Spartacus series quite yet, but it's off to a really, really great start. And by the way, let me throw this out there too, for the elephant in the room. For all these dickless, whiny little bitches out there, it's like, oh, why is there a girl in there? Oh, it's so woke. Why are they making a girl? They hate men. Listen, the way they set up the story about who she is and why she's even there is awesome. Like the whole reason she's even there for Asher to manipulate and use and all kind of stuff is like perfectly in line with it. And believe me, at least through the first 2 episodes, it's not like she's just some girl boss who walks in and starts beating everybody. No. She gets her ass handed to her constantly through the first couple of episodes. Anyway, it's done so well and it's set up so beautifully. And yeah, man, I can't wait. I can't wait to continue to watch more of this series. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Anyway, Rob, I know you've kind of been looking forward to it too. I mean, does anything stand out to you that I said? Is there anything you're kind of hoping to see in it? I don't know. What are you thinking?
What doesn't stand out to me? I mean, I listened to this. Look, it's interesting. They were going to do a sequel to Gladiator. And they were always talking about how do you bring back Maximus if he had died? And there was this idea that gods, in the afterlife sent him back to fight or whatever. So clearly, I think Spartacus took a page from Gladiator. And if there's anything the new Spartacus show should take a page from, it's what they didn't do with the sequel to Gladiator. So I'm all for it. Sex, violence, ripping off genitalia, all of this is just catnip to me, John. And look, if it's got great characters and a great story, I'll watch. I'm in.
All right, guys. Question is for you. What do you think about this? Listen, I know most of you don't have stars, and that's fine, but I'm telling you, it's worth getting just to watch House of Asher. I'm really digging it so far. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, we're going to move on now and talk about the big thing. Netflix has won the WB bidding war. What are the 5 main things we need to understand about it? We're going to go over that in just a second. But before we do, we're going to take a quick moment and thank one of the sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show, our friends at BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. Hey guys, we are right now in the middle of the holiday season, and this is always the time of year when traditions take center stage. For me, one of the small traditions I've had for myself since I was a teenager is taking at least one night during the Christmas season to just spend completely by myself, to just reflect on the year that was and how I want to improve myself in the year that's coming. The holidays can be joyful, but they can also be stressful, overwhelming, even lonely. So if you're thinking about starting therapy or getting back into it, BetterHelp is a great way to begin. BetterHelp has fully licensed therapists who work under a strict code of conduct, and they do the matching work for you. The way it works is you fill out a short questionnaire. They use over 12 years of experience to match you with someone who fits your goals. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch anytime from their tailored recommendations. With over 30,000 therapists and more than 5 million people served, the platform's average live session rating is 4.9 out of 5 from more than 1.7 million reviews. So this December, start a brand new tradition by taking care of you. Our listeners get 10% off at betterhelp.com/Campea. That's betterhelp.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at BetterHelp for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show. All right, guys, with that down, let's get into it here, shall we? The biggest story that has been going around in the world of movies for the last number of months, ever since Paramount made their first bid, was that Warner Brothers Discovery is up for sale. And now the race is over. It was officially announced last night that Netflix has won the bidding war. Netflix has won it. They put in the highest bid and they won. And the reaction across the whole world of entertainment has been quick, it has been swift, and it has been very divided. Some very happy, some very upset. Rob, yesterday we talked about that letter, that just embarrassing letter that Paramount sent to Netflix. Clearly they got wind that Netflix had won the bid. I spoke to a couple of people at Paramount and they told me, now listen, I'm still going to be cheering for David Ellison and Paramount moving forward. Okay. I am. I'm going to hope for great things for them. I still think there's a lot of potential upside. But I talked to a couple people at Paramount yesterday who said, yeah, the feeling across the company was that David Ellison embarrassed the company yesterday. that he embarrassed Paramount yesterday. And anyway, here's hoping that all continues to move forward. So that's it, guys. Netflix has won it. So what does that all mean? There are 5 key things I think we all need to understand, because as I've been looking across the discourse online about everybody talking about it, there seems to be 5 areas of questions. What happens with HBO? What happens with the executives? What happens? How much do they get it for? Do they own it right now? There's a lot of different questions. So I put together this little thing. There are 5 main things for us to know and understand about the Netflix deal, about Netflix buying Warner Brothers. The 5 things that we need to understand are, number 1, Netflix had the biggest bid. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes. Their bid was bigger than Paramount's and bigger than NBC Universal Comcast, outdoing Paramount and Comcast. The value of the deal is said to be, get this, $87.2 billion. That is bigger than the deal that Disney made to acquire 20th Century when they got it for $71.3 billion. The second thing, and we'll go into each one of these in detail in just a bit, but let me just go over them here quickly. The second thing we all need to understand about this deal is that the deal will take at least a year to actually come to completion, and won't begin to close until after Warner Brothers spins off their Discovery Television division. Remember, Warner Brothers announced a while ago that they were going to split Warner Brothers into 2, Warner Brothers Studio and HBO Max, and then all the TV assets. Remember that? Well, Netflix is only interested in owning Warner Brothers and HBO Max. So it's going to take about 9 more months for Warner Brothers to spin off that. And Netflix isn't even going to start to finalize the deal until after that's spun off. So it's going to be at least a year before Netflix owns Warner Brothers. So that's important for everybody to understand. The third thing that we need to understand about this is that Warner Brothers, the studio, according to what they're saying, will stay intact and will continue to put out movies, and their movies will continue to go to movie theaters. Again, we'll go more deeper into that in just a minute. The fourth thing for us to understand is that HBO Max will continue to operate as a standalone service. I know a lot of us were wondering if, Netflix gets Warner Brothers, are they just going to absorb it into? The official word right now is that HBO Max, the plan is for it to continue to function as a standalone service. We'll go into this more in a few minutes. And then fifthly, is that most of the current creative leadership is in fact staying with Warner Brothers. That includes Michael DeLuca, Pam Abdy, and James Gunn, that they are all staying. We're going to go into all this now, kind of one big thing at a time. So let's start with this first part here about Netflix had the biggest bid, $87.2 billion. The article, Netflix put out an official press release, and it said this. It said, Hollywood, California. Today, Netflix, this is yesterday, and Warner Brothers Discovery announced that they have entered into a definitive agreement under which Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers, including its film and television studios, HBO Max, and HBO. The cash and stock transaction is valued at $27.75 per share, subject to stuff, with a total enterprise value of approximately $82.7 billion, equity value of $72 billion. The transaction is expected to close after the previously announced separation of Warner Brothers Discovery's global network division, Discovery Global, into a new publicly traded company, which is now expected to be completed in the third quarter of 2026. By the way, Rob, I want to point out this number here, that ultimately the bid they gave was for $27.75 per share. I believe the Paramount bid was somewhere around $26. So that's a significant difference. Mm-hmm. But I want to point this out, Rob. I think this is important for everybody to get. You know how I've been all about David Zaslav? I mean, I've taken a lot of crap from people for the fact that I have been, hey guys, David Zaslav's doing almost everything right. Because you got to remember, when David Zaslav took over Warner Brothers, it was a dying dead hunk of meat patient on a operating table that had zero chance of survival. AT&T ran it into the ground. And when Discovery got Warner Brothers, the average stock price in the first 3 months was $16.50. That's what the market thought Warner Brothers was worth. Warner Brothers didn't have its own stock listing when it was still owned by AT&T. It was just AT&T stock. But once they spun it out and Warner Brothers was there on its own, its first 3 months average stock price was $16.50. It has now sold for $27.75 per share. Rob, that is an increase of 70% in 3.5 years. 70% in 3.5 years. That's all David Zaslav did for the company. So this represents, again, guys, a massive amount of money. $82.7 billion, again, worth significantly more, about $10 billion more than what the Disney deal to get 20th Century was. So that's a pretty huge thing. Okay. Well, let's look at the second thing that we're here to understand, which is that the deal will take at least a year and not happen until after Warner Brothers spins off WBD Global. Again, we go back over to the press release here. They said the transaction is expected to close after the previously announced separation of WBD Globals. That's not going to happen until Q3. And then after that happens, after all that, so we're talking about September, October, and then they start the finalization processes. And that's when they might, if there's going to be any government regulatory pushback, that's when they're going to have to deal with it. So guys, do not expect that tomorrow you're going to turn on Netflix and see House of the Dragon on Netflix. Maybe in some international territories they already do. I don't know. But don't expect, if you live in the United States, to pop on Netflix tomorrow and see Penguin on Netflix tomorrow. This is going to take, at the very earliest, a year to all get through. So don't expect anything huge and major. That means for the next year or so, everything is going to continue on business as normal. Nothing's going to be impacted. Everything's going to go ahead business as normal. And it's going to be at least a year before Netflix comes in and puts everything under their control. All right. The third thing we were going to look at here was that Warner Brothers will stay intact and continue to put out theatrical films. They are going to stay intact and continue to put out theatrical films. Again, this comes to us directly from the Netflix press release. Netflix expects to maintain Warner Brothers' current operations and builds on its strengths, including theatrical releases for films. They put it right in their own press release. Warner Brothers is going to stay intact. They're going to have their own operations. They're going to be doing their own things. The movies are going to continue to get theatrical releases. Now, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos did hint that they might look at theatrical release windows, though. This is what he said. See, this comes to us from Variety, who said, CEO Ted Sarandos says Warner Brothers movies will remain in theaters. My pushback has always been mostly in the fact of the long exclusive windows, which we don't really think are that consumer friendly. I wouldn't look at this as a change in approach for Netflix movies or for Warner Brothers movies. I think over time, the windows will evolve to be much more consumer friendly to be able to meet the audience where they are quicker. I'd say you should count on everything that is planned on going to theaters through Warner Brothers. Will continue to go to the theaters through Warner Brothers. And he goes on to say in the same interview that the plan is still for Netflix movies may get some short theatrical windows, but I would expect to see everything with Warner Brothers go on normal. Now, when he says shorter windows and he says that his problem with theatrical has always been about the overly long theatrical windows, which he's totally wrong about, by the way. But I think he was talking about the 90-day windows as opposed to the more modern standard of 45. So the way I interpreted it, and I could be wrong, was that he made a distinction between Netflix releases and Warner Brothers releases, and saying that, hey, I don't really expect anything to change with Warner Brothers with the 45 days, maybe a little bit less, but the really short ones are going to be our Netflix originals, because that's the way we've always done it. Now, it could be, I'll get to this a little bit later about, I don't know how much I trust Sarandos, but we'll get to that in just a second. At least that's what we're going to now. But basically here, the underlying point is that the plan, they said they presented this to the Warner Brothers shareholders, that we are going to keep Warner Brothers as a company intact with its creative forces, and its theatrical division is still going to have theatrical release. And that's the plan. That's their commitment. Whether their commitment means anything or not, we'll talk about that as we progress. Okay, let's look at that fourth thing now. The fourth thing of understanding is that HBO Max will continue to operate as a standalone service. This comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, who wrote this. HBO and its streaming service, HBO Max, will continue to operate as a standalone, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos said. Co-CEO Greg Peters said, the HBO brand is powerful to consumers. That gives us a lot of options to figure out how you package things in different ways, he said. Okay, so whether this means that we're going to continue to go on to have two completely separate, independently running streaming services, Netflix and HBO Max, or whether Netflix will start to package them together as a bundle. Hey, for $27 a month, you get Netflix and HBO Max. Or whether that means, like, you know how in Disney Plus, you now have Hulu right inside of Disney Plus. Maybe HBO Max becomes one of those things inside of Netflix. Like, you load up Netflix and you can look at your highest recommended, or you can click on the HBO Max option. I don't know what their ultimate plan is going to be there. They're saying they're not quite sure how they're going to bundle it all together. But the one thing they are saying is that they are going to keep HBO Max as a separate functioning entity. Again, that will bring up the questions of how much do we trust them on that. But that is at least what they're saying is their plan. That's what they think is good for them, and that's what they're going to do. All right. Now the fifth thing, and this is one that's going to be interesting to some people, that most of the creative leadership is staying, including Warner Brothers' Mike DeLuca, Warner Brothers' Abdi, and DC Studios' James Gunn. Now, this was implied in the statement that the press release that Netflix put out that said, hey, we're basically going to keep the company intact. That includes their creatives. Now, Rob, last night, like a lot of people, my phone was a flurry. Calling everybody I knew I could talk. Because, you know, I got the contact information of a lot of significant studio insiders. 9 times out of 10, they never respond to me. Half of 1 out of 10, they tell me to F off. And every once in a while, they actually respond to me and tell me, give me an answer. You guys remember, I'm just going to give you some context here. I was the first person on the planet a year and a half before they officially announced it, that Ben Affleck was out as Batman. And everybody called me a liar and everybody called me stupid. It turns out it was right. The person inside Warner Brothers who told me that is the same person that responded to me yesterday. When I asked the question, when it says that they're going to keep the company intact, does this or does this not mean that the creative heads like DeLuca and Abdi, Casey Bloys, who's the head of HBO Max, James Gunn, Peter Safran, David Zaslav, does that mean they're all staying? Basically, this is what he gave me. David Zaslav is a question mark. That's what this person wrote to me, that there are a couple of options on the table. One of the options is that they give him this huge, generous exit package to leave, or it is still theoretically possible he could stay to lead Warner Brothers as well. either or, not really clear on that. What they are clear on is that Mike DeLuca, co-chair of Warner Brothers Films, is staying. Pam Abdy, also co-chair of Warner Brothers Films, is staying. You remember a little while ago, they announced that David Zaslav just gave them new contracts and new deals. And we'll see how that kind of stretches out. And then, of course, James Gunn. James Gunn, co-CEO of DC Studios, is staying, leading the DC Universe creative. And again, Rob, I got to ask, do you have any music playing in the background over there?
No.
Anything on your computer might be playing in the background? Because I've got nothing open on my machines. Anyway, it's kind of coming and going. So anyway, now I asked about Peter Safran, and what he said to me about Peter Safran was, I don't know for sure, but I think it's kind of assumed. I asked about Bloys, the guy who's the head of HBO Max.
Casey, yeah.
Casey, yep, didn't have an answer for me on that, so I don't know about that one. But what I can tell you is that at least the creative studio heads, Mike DeLuca, Pam Abdy, and James Gunn, and by assumption, Peter Safran, I guess, they are all indeed staying. They're all staying on as well. So again, as we just run down the 5 key points to take away, the things you guys need to know that are most important about this Netflix deal is the following: is that Netflix, they were the biggest bid. It's not like they just didn't like Paramount. Paramount had the smaller bid. Netflix had the bigger bid, so they got it, $87.2 billion. It will not take full effect for at least a year, so don't expect Netflix to be running anything at Warner Brothers for at least a year. Warner Brothers will stay intact as a studio and will continue to put out theatrical films. HBO Max will continue to operate as a standalone service, and at least some of the creative heads of the studio division, DeLuca, Abdy, and James Gunn, are all going to be staying. That's at least the plan. Anyway, Rob, whole bunch of information, whole bunch of data to go through there. You, I believe, were in the screening for Avatar when the news broke that Netflix actually took it over. I'm sure you came out of that movie with your phone blowing up.
What was wild was when the credits started to roll, and people were listening to the song because Miley Cyrus
and start turning their phones on.
Yeah, you start seeing phones coming up, and you heard murmuring. Like some people like, oh my God, like it was wild, dude. It was wild to sit in there and have this happen. And I was there by myself, and my friend James had to leave, who got me into the screening. And it was crazy to see. And then of course I'm sitting there taking a picture of Miley Cyrus. I hadn't even looked yet. I figured I'd look at the pictures or see what was going on, and I was pretty stunned. I mean, look, we've talked about this a lot. Like, where's this going to go? What's going to happen? And I think that my problem with Netflix is, and this is going to seem silly to say, is it's not really a studio as much as it is a content-driven. I mean, you're talking about analytics, and Netflix makes all of it knows it has this whole philosophy about what it's going to make and what it should do and how it should do it. And it's all based on analytics. It's all analytics driven. So first and foremost, they're not thinking, how can we get the best movies made with the best creators? They're thinking about creating a product, content, that has to hit these marks. We know that we have to have this happen to get our viewers engaged in the first 5 minutes. So a movie has to open like this. And by definition, what Netflix is doing is not driven by art. It's driven exclusively by analytics and what their data tells them, which means that their philosophy does not allow for innovation. It's only based on data. And the problem with data is that data only exists with things we've already seen and already know. What Netflix doesn't allow so much, and I've heard this from creators, is innovation. If you're only giving people what they've known or seen in the past, you're never going to have, they would never make a Star Wars. They would never make those things where nobody wanted to make Star Wars until Alan Ladd Jr. said, I'm going to take a shot on this Lucas kid. And they made it. So the problem with Netflix is they're artistically not inclined. They're delivering products to get their analytics and their subscribers there. But the thing is, movies are that great collision between art, what the filmmakers want to make, the stories that they want to tell. Netflix would never have greenlit Sinners. It never would have greenlit One Battle After Another. It never would have greenlit a number of films that are probably your favorites or movies that came out this year. I know for a fact that there's producers that I've spoken to that Netflix just didn't want to make their movies because they didn't hit analytics. And they said, nope, that's not for us. People that even have deals at Warner or at Netflix. So to me, that's bad for the business. It's bad for cinema. It's bad for movies in general. Now, that said, if this is going to happen, if Netflix allows Warner Brothers to keep Warner Brothersing, then they will get the benefits of that. They will get those great shows from HBO that will eventually wind up on their service after a certain amount of time. I mean, if HBO, if they want to filter over Dream On and Sex and the City and all their 90s shows, like if they give them a decade to stay on HBO to keep it viable and then move them over, I don't think they're going to want to do that because they're greedy and they're going to want to drive. They're going to be like, we could get more subscribers if we just put all the HBO shows on our service. So keeping HBO as a standalone, that sounds good now. How long is that going to last? We'll see. But that's my fear. And you have a lot of creatives already lining up against this. They're already contacting Washington.
Yeah, but the exact same thing happened. The exact same people were doing it when Disney bought Fox, and that didn't really do anything.
I think that we're diminished as well. I mean, Steve Asbell, who I like to call the quiet king of franchises, is doing the best he can over at Fox, exploiting their IP, whether it's Predator, whether it's Alien, whether it's Planet of the Apes. Now they're making a few original films, but they've been held under a leash. They don't have autonomy over 20th Century Fox. And they've got one of the greatest studio executives, the greatest studio heads ever over there in Asbell, who's incredibly creative, very learned, very knowledgeable, and has been with the studio for 30 years. So if they would allow him off the reservation so he can do whatever he wants, it could be something really, really great. But I think that with Netflix, look, if it's going to happen, and it's happening, so I would just hope that the more autonomy Warner Brothers has, if they use that if they think of it as an incubator, and let Warner Brothers do what Warner Brothers does and make whatever they want to make. Trust Abdi and DeLuca to do it, because I'll tell you one thing, Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca have forgotten more about making movies than Ted Sarandos will ever know. Ted Sarandos, the man who said in October of this past year, we have no interest in acquiring legacy media. Well, Ted, yet another thing you've said that didn't necessarily pan out. But look, I'd like to see it all work out for everybody, but I don't think it's overall good for the business. And I don't necessarily think it's great for movies unless Netflix will just embrace theatrical and say, okay, let's let Warner Brothers do what they do. We acquired them and we're going to let them do what they do. But I don't see that happening.
By the way, I got to throw this out there. I've seen a lot of people in the live chat who apparently were not listening at all. Somebody's saying, oh, now they're not going to let them release Mortal Kombat 2. Guys, Netflix, if everything goes completely smoothly, and it probably won't, but even if everything goes 100% smoothly, Netflix doesn't actually get Warner Brothers for at least a year. Like some people saying, oh no, they're going to cancel Batman 2. No, they're not. First of all, Netflix wouldn't cancel Batman 2. Secondly, they couldn't if they wanted to, because they don't actually own Warner Brothers yet. They won't actually own it for at least another year. That's why we went so in depth into this. We were very, very clear about that. Look, I'm going to say this, Rob. When it first came to light, I guess you could say, that Netflix was entering the bidding war, I said in no uncertain terms, this is the worst case scenario. It's absolutely the worst case scenario, because Netflix is just going to absorb it all in, and we're going to lose one of our most celebrated theatrical release production companies, and this is terrible, and this is horrible, and this is by far the worst thing that could possibly happen. Then later we started to hear that Netflix may be actually interested in getting Warner Brothers because they want it as its own independent studio. To which we said at that point, okay, I still don't love it, but my position on Netflix getting it will soften if that's the fact, if that indeed is the case. If they're actually going to get it and they're going to keep DeLuca and Abdi and they're going to let Warner Brothers continue to operate as a studio, and if they're going to continue to let them put movies out theatrically, if that is the case, I still don't love it, but I'm a little bit less against it if that's the case. And Rob, I think that's what this is all going to boil down to, is does long-term Netflix allow Warner Brothers, and listen, they're going to be owned by Netflix. Obviously, Netflix is going to have influence. Of course it will. You pointed out 20th Century under Disney, Lucasfilm under Disney. But if they set up the proper structure where it's like, hey, we give oversight, we give you, Warner Brothers, our division, an annual budget, I don't know, maybe $7 billion a year, whatever. We give you an annual budget. You create content, you create the movies, put them out in theaters, then we get to put them on Netflix when they're done, all that kind of stuff. We might step in and say no sometimes, which like Disney does to some of its own sub studios as well. But if they let DeLuca and Abdi cook, if they let Gunn and Safran, who I'm assuming is going to be a part of the Gunn deal, if they let Gunn and Safran cook, if they let them do what they do, if they do keep Casey Bloys, who I don't know if they are or not, but if they do, let HBO continue to cook. And they stay committed, Rob, to that statement, to those commitments that we're going to have Warner Brothers as standalone. We own them. They're part of our ecosystem now, but we're going to fund them. They make their stuff. We believe it's going to be complementary to what we're doing, which, by the way, remember, Rob, I said that was the one thing the Netflix idea had going for it, is that it would at least be complementary, because whether you're looking at Disney or whether you're looking at Sony or NBC Universal Comcast, if any of them got Warner Brothers, they already do theatrical release studio films. And there would have been a lot more crossover, right? It wouldn't have been as complementary. It would have been more replacing. At least Netflix doesn't have a theatrical wing. At least at Netflix, and again, I'm stretching a bit here to find positives in this, but at least at Netflix, they are now acquiring a company that does something they don't do right now. And if they can embrace that, and that's a big if they can embrace that and really make it complementary, this could, it's a stretch, it could be really interesting. And it could be really good. My fear, of course, Rob, which I think you're probably going to echo, my fear here is that Netflix is full of shit. My fear here is that Ted Sarandos is just a big lying bastard, which I'm not saying he is. That's my fear. And then they're going to get Warner Brothers to go, "Mwahahaha, our next grand scheme in killing movies has come to fruition," and they just shut everything down, which could happen. That's not what they say they're going to do, but that's my fear, Rob. And while I am not panicking today, I am not running around saying the sky is falling today. I'm trying to look at some of the potential positives. I am still yet not feeling very easy about this. I don't know. What's your perspective on all that?
I'm with you. I think the problem is going to be Ted Sarandos is going to say, well, why is it that we're putting up with theatrical releases where some movies make a ton of money and other movies make very little money? Can't we apply analytics and make sure that all of our theatrical releases make a certain amount of money? And maybe we'll use analytics and we'll only make these kinds of movies because they're the ones that always make money.
You know what my answer to that is? My answer to that is this is what I hope somebody in the room with Sarandos, or that he would even recognize himself, is that even the movies they release that don't make as much money, then when they end up on Netflix, do much better than another
I
movie like that just being dropped on net. That's my hope. That's
I
my
totally
hope.
I totally agree with you, but I think that anybody like Netflix, this is my problem with our modern era of when you're thinking about maximizing profits, and I understand you're in business. It ain't show friends, it's show business. You always want to maximize your profits. The problem is you're dealing with a product that is inherently unstable. You can't like if it was stable, everybody would make Star Wars. Everybody would make Marvel movies. Even Marvel movies aren't stable. Not you've got some that'll be Infinity War and Endgame, which by the way, Endgame's getting re-released in theaters next September. You've got Infinity War and Endgame, then how come you wind up with a movie like The Eternals or Quantum Mania that doesn't make those kinds of, and then they're going to start applying analytics to only make, Marvel movies. You can't make great films that way. And I guarantee you, and the thing is, if they could, if Ted Sarandos really knew what he was doing, Electric State wouldn't have cost $300 million and it wouldn't have sucked. And it wouldn't have The Gray Man. You've got the Russo brothers making 2 movies for you. Why didn't they make, well, because they're not, but they weren't theatrically released. But how come they didn't perform? How come they're not as great as Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame? I would say, and I would posit to Ted Sarandos, they don't know how to make movies. Warner Brothers makes movies. That's what they've done for 100 years. Let them make your movies. And as a matter of fact, under Warner Brothers auspices, why not start a genre division like a Blumhouse that's only going to make you horror movies, with a cap at $10 million? Bring new talent in. You're way overspending with movies. There's a million things they could do.
But that's why you bring in DeLuca and Abdi, right? Because
I agree.
with DeLuca and Abdi, you have people now that are literally saying no to Tom Cruise because the projects he wants to do are too expensive.
Right.
That's
right.
And if
And they should.
Again, I'm this is a really, really big if. If Sarandos is smarter than I'm giving him credit for, and if Sarandos is smarter than most of us are giving him credit for, then the idea of getting DeLuca and Abdi and the infrastructure and the history of Warner Brothers, and he sees that all as something they need, then you know what I could see happening in an ideal world? In 2 years, we find out, DeLuca and Abdi have been promoted to head of all film for Netflix, Warner Brothers altogether. Like that. Again, this is if he's wise, if he's forward thinking, if he's the idiot that I take him for, and if he's the idiot that I think he is, they won't do it. But I'm choosing to be optimistic that he looked at Abdi and DeLuca and Warner Brothers and saying, yeah, we have dropped the ball historically. Nobody makes worse movies than Netflix. They make a great one out of every 30, 40, or 50. But no studio, nobody producing movies does a worse job than Netflix. They suck. And I'm hoping to believe that, again, that Sandros is smarter than I give him credit for. And he's like, you know what? We need those guys. We need Warner Brothers. We need DeLuca and Abdi. We need James Gunn and Peter Safran. We need Casey. We need maybe Zaslav. I don't know. We need to bring them in to give us that area of the business that we don't do. And then hopefully we can learn how to improve our side of the business as well. I might be way over optimistic here on this, Rob, because this can go really bad really fast, but I'm hoping that's what they're doing.
I'll tell you something else. They have the most knowledgeable executive about the history of film in terms of Warner Brothers catalog and most of the catalogs of the other studios at Warner Brothers, named George Feltenstein. I always joke that somebody should make him a worldwide film czar because he literally knows where every negative is. And they have a division at Warner Brothers called Warner Archive. And Warner Archive and George Feltenstein's team is in charge of going back into their rich history. And they have both MGM movies and Warner Brothers movies. And they've been doing new restorations of things like The Searchers that are amazing, or High Society, and all of Warner Brothers' rich history, which now, if Netflix is going to own all those Warner Brothers movies, all of them, they need to go back and they need to promote George Feltenstein to make sure that the hundreds, thousands of movies and shows are getting preserved properly. Because as we just saw with the remastering of Mad Men, they completely botched it with the wrong aspect ratio. So you actually see crew people in their 4K remaster because nobody's doing anything correctly anymore. And they need to do that because Warner Brothers has, I mean, you go back even to the 70s. There's Warner Brothers movies that need to be preserved that no one's ever seen, that have sat on a shelf, like Ken Russell's The Devils. Let's get all that stuff out there. Warner Brothers should be one of the gems of Netflix. They should start carving out and make new sections on Netflix to showcase Warner Brothers' 100-year history of cinema. But none of that's going to be analytics driven. They've got to do it because they want to. They have to love. It can't just be about analytics. They buy the studio and they have to let the people that are creative, that love movies, get in there and start doing what they do. Because all Sarandos knows is money and analytics. And unfortunately, he's now in a business where a studio they've been purveyors of art for 100 years. The art that has fueled America. And I hope, I mean, that's a little highfalutin, but I hope he thinks of it that way, because otherwise, where are we going to be? I mean, dopamine hits for the rest of time. I want to see people still create and make cool things. We'll see.
All right. Well, guys, look, this could be the single most apocalyptic thing that has ever happened in the history of the world of film. I go back to the very first thing I ever said when I found out Netflix was going to enter into the bidding war, that this would be the absolute worst possible scenario. Since then, they've made certain verbal commitments that they actually want to keep Warner Brothers intact. They want to keep HBO as a separate individual thing. They want to keep putting out Warner Brothers films theatrically. Okay, so if they do all those things, maybe some good can come out of it. Maybe. I'm not going to lie to you, though. While I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible, and while I'm trying to look at the actual facts, and as I'm trying to see the potential in all this, I ain't going to lie, I'm still very nervous as a film fan, as a student of film, as somebody who is historically, I've loved film my whole life, and this still makes me very nervous. There is potential upside. There is. But this could also be apocalyptic, and we're just going to have to wait to see how it all turns out. I want to remind everybody that there were some people who thought Disney taking over Fox was also going to be apocalyptic, and it actually ended up okay. But I don't know. We'll have to see how this goes. Guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Netflix has apparently won the bidding war, but there's still a long road ahead of us. They're more than at least a year away from actually taking it over. What do you think about their thoughts about keeping HBO going, keeping Warner Brothers going, keeping theatrical going? Do you think they actually mean it? Do you think they're lying through their teeth? Do you think some good can come out of it? Do you think this is all going to be the apocalypse? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, we are now going to go on to the most important part of our show, which is taking your live comments and questions. A lot of them have come in, so I've already turned off the super chats, just so you guys know, but a lot have come in already. But we got to do two things before we get to your questions. First of all, we have to bid good afternoon to writer, director, producer Robert Meyer Burnett. Great insights as always, Rob. We'll talk to you again on Monday. Have a great weekend, man.
All right, sir. You too. Enjoy yourself.
And, of course, the other thing we have to do here, guys, before we get to your live questions, is we've got to hear from another sponsor of today's episode of the John Campea Show, our friends at Aura. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Aura. Guys, if you are anything like me, you swear every year you're going to be on top of your Christmas shopping, and then suddenly it's December 20th, the shelves are empty, and you're standing around in Target asking yourself, does my aunt even like candles? But this year, I am not doing that because of Aura Frames. It's completely saved me. See, I always struggled with what to get people in my life, but this year I'm going to give out a couple of Aura Frames, and it's hands down the most personal, meaningful gift that I can possibly give. And here's the best part. Aura lets you upload unlimited photos and videos. Plus, the frame comes in a premium gift box with no price tag, so it feels like a classy, well thought out gift, even if you bought it last minute. Guys, you can't gift wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code CAMPEA at the checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code Campea. This deal is exclusive to our listeners and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in on time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning that we sent you at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. And thank you to our friends at Aura for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show. All right, guys, with all that down, let's get over to your live questions here, shall we? Where are we going to start off? We are starting off with, let me see if I can get this. All right, you guys know I do these shows on Friday without Jonathan here, and Jonathan makes it a lot easier. Let's see here. I cannot get it to move. There we go. All right. We're going to start things off here with Johnny Got Lost. And Johnny Got Lost writes, Paramount, nah, we don't need WB. 2 seconds later, they're playing favorites. Arrest them. I wonder what tantrum Ellison will come up with next. Listen, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and I completely agree with him. I think, Paramount's going to try to launch some kind of a hostile takeover. I don't think that's going to work. All this kind of stuff. He's going to exhaust trying something else to try to get it. But at the end of the day, you remember a couple of weeks ago, Ellison said they have a plan B in case they don't end up getting Warner Brothers. I think their plan B is getting Universal. Because remember, Comcast said that if they won the bid to get Warner Brothers, that they were going to merge Warner Brothers in with Universal and then spin it off, because Comcast, I think, wants to get out of the entertainment game. I think they want to go more into broadband and digital. So I'm willing to bet money we're going to find out in the next few weeks that Paramount's now trying to go after Universal. I could be wrong about that, but that's just kind of my guess. All right. Next up here, we've got also Johnny Got Lost. Alleviate my worries, John. On a scale of 1 to 10, how screwed is the theatrical run with Netflix running things? Lesser of two evils, but still worried. It all depends on how, look, let me again look at it on the optimistic side. Okay, because we all know what the pessimistic side is. I've been saying it a lot. The pessimistic side is Netflix is going to ruin everything. They're just going to straight up ruin everything, and this could be the apocalypse. Okay, we all understand that. Here's the optimistic side. The optimistic side is that they do what they say they're going to do. That they let Warner Brothers continue to operate under the leadership of DeLuca Abdi and James Gunn with DC and Peter Safran, hopefully. Although that part I don't know yet. And that they'll see, hey, these things in theaters is even better for Netflix, because when we put it on streaming, those movies do even better. Oh my God. And that's me being optimistic. So it could work out that way. There is definitely a path to that. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm just saying that as a film fan, that's the optimist part of me, but the other part of me is still very apprehensive about this whole thing. I have never been this nervous about the potential future of the movie industry. I've never been this nervous. I haven't been this nervous even when the pandemic hit. So, but there is potential upside. There is potential positive way forwards. We're just going to have to wait at least a year to see how that's all going to shake out. All right, good question. Next up, Abraham writes, hey, John, saw Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and I'm surprised how much better it was from the first one. Better story, scarier, and more animatronics. You know, it's funny, Abraham, that you say that, because in the live chat before the show started, I saw a couple of our viewers saying that they saw Five Nights at Freddy's last night. I was going to go see it, but I wanted to watch the football game. So I stayed home and watched the football game. But I saw a couple of our viewers talking in the live chat before the show started, and they hated it. So I'm glad you liked it, though. I am still going to go see it. I'm going to go see it even before the movie meetup on Tuesday, but hopefully I'll like it too. All right, next up. Matan writes, my biggest scare about the merger is that Netflix will enforce the shitty way their originals look on HBO. If there will be an HBO brand, though if Casey Bloys stays, he could fix that problem. Netflix, their shitty originals look on HBO. Do you mean the way Netflix does their shitty looks on Netflix? Because HBO shows look great. HBO shows look great. I think that's what you mean, that Netflix will enforce their shit on HBO. I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, it sounds, again, at least according to that report, it sounds like, let me see if I can find it again. I think I lost it. Yeah, I lost it. But it sounds like, according to the Wall Street Journal, that Sarando said HBO Max will continue to run as its own independent entity. Like they'll own it, and if that's the case, then shows will be shows. But I don't know. I did not hear about whether Blois is going to be a part of it or not. I'm going to assume he is, but I don't know that for sure. All right. Good point, Metan. All right. Gopala writes, Ellison losing Sheridan and WB not looking good. Well, yeah, but look, in Ellison's defense, look at all the people he signed. Like he signed, he just got the Duffer Brothers away from Netflix. That's a big deal. He also signed he's got the new Timothée Chalamet project. He has landed a lot of stuff, and he didn't lose Warner Brothers. To say he lost Warner Brothers suggests that he had it. He never did. They were one of the players up for it. He was up against some stiff competition in Netflix and in NBC Universal Comcast. I think David Ellison completely embarrassed himself and his company yesterday with that stupid letter they wrote. I think they totally humiliated themselves. But that being said, I don't think it's any... Yeah, you can point out, they lost Taylor Sheridan. Okay, that was a big deal, but they also got a lot of stuff at the same time. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily... I don't think losing this is necessarily a bad look on Ellison. Because remember, he just got Paramount. Like everybody forgets that. Ellison hasn't been at Paramount forever. He literally just got Paramount. So that was a big win for him. So they lost this one. I don't think it looks that bad on him, to be honest. All right. Fondaful writes, love the show. Thank you so much. Do you have any ideas as to what might happen with all the Discovery content that is currently on HBO Max after the acquisition? Well, the way I assume it's going to work is, remember, they're going to split off Discovery and all the TV assets other than HBO and HBO Max. That stays with Warner Brothers. But Discovery and all that stuff is going to split off into a new company. So therefore, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong about this, but it seems to me that it makes sense that all the Discovery content will go with Discovery once they split Discovery and all the TV assets off sometime in September or October. All right. Next up, Christopher Diaz writes, what did you think of Zootopia 2? Still haven't seen it. Had our tickets, was going to go. Something very important came up that I can't talk about. Something very important came up. I still haven't seen it. So Ann and I are hoping to get out to go see it this weekend because I really do want to see it. All right. Ryan Trabuco writes, sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Ryan, for supporting us in that level, man. My friend from San Diego. Happy Friday, John and Jonathan. Jonathan's not here on Fridays. He has the days off. You probably have already addressed this during the Netflix topic, but what are the chances of Paramount launching a hostile takeover bid in the aftermath? And if so, would that be successful? It won't be successful. We're already hearing word that they are going to try to do that, but it won't be successful. I mean, like I can look into a crystal ball and see the future. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. But I don't think it's going to be successful. It all comes down to what the shareholders want. It's not up to David Zaslav. It's not even up to the Warner Brothers board. It's up to what the shareholders want. And it sounds like the shareholders have spoken. Again, I'm not discounting that anything is possible, and it is, but I think this fight's over. Paramount may try to drag the fight out, but I don't think they have a chance. But again, I'm not saying that definitively. Anything can happen. So let's see what happens. All right. Perspective anyway writes, Netflix's biggest show ever is still out in theaters and yet is sold out in theaters. And yet the co-CEO thinks consumers want to watch movies at home. Make it make sense. Here's the thing. We as human beings if we're intelligent, we believe certain things, and then as new information becomes available to us, we can change what we believe. It is possible. What I'm hoping will happen here, and it may be an absolutely naive hope. What I'm hoping happens here is that on top of committing to keeping Warner Brothers independent, well, not independent, but keeping Warner Brothers intact and producing films that are going to go theatrical, what I'm hoping is that he starts to himself see firsthand, now that it's his studio, the benefits of longer theatrical windows. That Tom Cruise kind of knows what he's talking about when he talks about longer theatrical windows. Now, that very well may not happen. It's likely that it's not going to happen. But I'm going to hold out some hope that as he now gets into that position, that he is the owner of a big movie theatrical release studio, that he starts over time to see the benefit of that. That's just me being optimistic, but it is what it is. All right. Next up, Amin writes, for now, I decide to remain optimistic and have hope. Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. Shawshank Redemption. Listen, what I tried to do today with the show and breaking everything down is like, look, you guys all know my base belief. Netflix getting Warner Brothers was the worst possible outcome. It was the worst possible scenario. But that said, I don't want to ignore the facts and the data that we do have, which is they say they are committed to keeping Warner Brothers intact as a studio. They say they are committed to keeping HBO Max intact as a separate streaming service. They said they are committed to keeping the leadership intact. Pam Abdi, Mike DeLuca, James Gunn. They are committed to all those things. Now, I don't know that I believe them. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying we shouldn't believe them. I'm not saying we should believe them. I'm just saying I'm not sure I believe them. I'm just being honest with you. But, as you break down all the facts, it's just that there are realities that we can potentially be optimistic about and hopeful about. This could work out well. There are paths. I feel like Doctor Strange in Infinity War going, maybe it's just one, but maybe there are several paths to this working out okay. But as we've said many times, there is also many, many, many paths that this works out to be apocalyptic, but we'll see. All right. Amin also writes, to help keep films in theaters, I think the Academy needs to come out and just set a 30-day minimum in order for a film to be eligible for awards. No, you can't do that. Yeah, and the reason you can't do that is because it's not up to the studios. If the movie theaters don't want your movie that nobody is seeing in their theaters anymore, you can't force movie theaters to keep playing it. Like, it's just as simple. Movie theaters make money by people coming in and buying popcorn and soda. So if they have a movie in theater 3, let's just call it movie X, is in theater 3, and it's not bringing in anybody to buy popcorn or soda, and it's the theater sitting empty, well, guess what? After a week or two, they're going to pull it out of that theater. So you can't say that, a studio's got to keep it in theaters for at least 30 days. Well, it may not be up to the studios, right? And you can't force the theaters to keep the movies in there if they don't want them. So that, unfortunately, won't work. All right. David Cushmore writes, did you had a great Thanksgiving? I did. Canadian Thanksgiving. It was great. Thank you. Do you think Ohio State will win the NCAA championship title again? They certainly look borderline unstoppable. That said, don't count out Indiana. That said, don't count out Georgia. That said, look, the things look good, but I don't know that I'd put a lot of money on it myself. All right. Matan writes, Netflix's disdain for theatrical seems to be another bit of Silicon Valley's Soviet way of thinking, where they think that the old way of doing things is inherently worse. We saw it with Steve Jobs. Here's the thing that actually gives me, I have little glimpses of optimism. Here's one of the things that gives me my glimpses of optimism. I think Steve Sarandos and Netflix have always expressed that big disdain for theatrical because they see theatrical as their competition. People are either staying home to watch Netflix or they're going to the movie theaters to watch movies. And those two things are butting heads against each other. Fist my bump. And so that's the way he looks at it, that theatrical is the enemy because people either stay home and watch Netflix or they're not staying home to watch Netflix and they're going to movies. Therefore, we hate theatrical. But what happens now if theatrical is part of his portfolio? What happens now when, I am now a theatrically released studio owner? Well, CEO at any rate. My kind of, what I think could happen here, and again, this is me trying to be optimistic, is that they're like, okay, now it's not either people stay home and watch Netflix or they go to the movies. Maybe now this evolves his worldview of the whole thing to, people go to the movies and then they come home and watch Netflix and they watch our movies on Netflix. So again, I don't know if that's the way it's going to work out, but again, new things happen. Your perspective changes. It happens in life. Let's see where this goes. All right. Renetta writes, hey y'all, was your, feast giving fire fabulous and fork licking good? Trust y'all ate good and rolled away from the table satisfied. I'm not going to lie. Ann and I were on the road on Thanksgiving Day, coming back from our movie meetups, and we literally had Thanksgiving dinner at Buc-ee's. Yes, we stopped at a glorified truck stop gas station and we ate at a Buc-ee's. But you know what? It was actually pretty damn good. We actually had a pretty good time, Renetta. All right, next up. Praddy writes, Senator Elizabeth Warren said this deal looks like an anti-monopoly nightmare and pledged to fight this and prevent from happening. If both parties of government don't want this to happen, do you think this deal will go through? Yes, because the government, okay, look, technically speaking, the government can't stop it. What the government can do is bring a case against it and go to court to try to stop it. But then it's going to be up to the courts. And that's then a matter of, are they following the law or are they not? What I would say to members of government, both on the left and the right, is this is far less of a monopoly. And again, I say this as somebody who believes that Netflix was the worst possible option. But if I'm being objective, this is much less of a monopoly than, say, if Paramount got it or if Universal got it. Paramount and Universal are both historic, big, theatrical movie producing studios, acquiring yet another big, historic movie producing studio. Now you have fewer theatrical movie producing studios. At least with Netflix, Netflix isn't in that business right now. Netflix isn't a theatrical movie producing studio. So by Netflix getting Warner Brothers, we're not losing a theatrical movie producing studio. If Universal got them, well, we had two theatrical movie producing studios. Now we've only got one. If Paramount got them, we had two theatrical movie producing studios and now there's only one. But by Netflix getting them, Netflix isn't a theatrical movie producing studio. I mean, yeah, there's some problems with Netflix and HBO Max both being streamers. That's another issue. But at least as far as theatrically producing movie studios, you're not actually losing one. You have one and one is still going to be there. So this one is actually least monopolistic than the other options would have been. Anyway, that's just the way I kind of see it. Anyway. All right. Next up, Josh Ward writes, do you think Mike Flanagan / Scarlett Johansson can salvage the Exorcist franchise, or is recapturing the power of the original impossible? No, it's a totally new movie. Of course it's not impossible. Anytime a new filmmaker comes on board, it always comes down to this. Did you make a good movie or didn't you? And if they make a good movie, then yeah, it's instantly, just like that, it's resuscitated. So really you're asking the question, The question you're really asking is, can Mike Flanagan make a good movie? Well, obviously the answer to that is yes. Doesn't mean he will. Doesn't mean he will. But we know he can. And so as long as he makes the movie good, then yeah, 100%. Absolutely they can. All right. Next up, Benji Gator writes, with embargoes, what are the rules and what can and can't be said versus a full review instead of just the length of the reaction video or social media post? There are two different kinds of review embargoes. Okay. The first review embargo is called the social media embargo. And then the second is the actual review embargo. The social media embargo, simply, that usually breaks first. And that's just saying you can jump on social media and give a quick thought of what you thought about the movie. Quick thought of what you thought about the movie. So you hop on Twitter, do your 140 characters or however many characters you can do on Twitter now. I've been off Twitter for like 2 years. And you can do that. Then the full review, then you can fully talk about the movie once the regular review embargo lifts. And sometimes studios will only have one embargo and you can't write or say anything until the embargo drops. Sometimes they have two embargoes, the regular review embargo and then the social media embargo, in which case you can say something just, briefly, quick. So that's how it basically works. All right. Next up, L. Leo writes, Ted Sarandos saying that theatrical release windows will evolve to become shorter doesn't sound good to me. I'm not, out of all the things that I'm desperately and panicking worried about, that's the least of them. Windows are already shorter, right? They're 45 days now rather than 90. And I think what he's going to see is that these windows work better for him and they actually will serve him and serve Netflix better. Again, it may not, but out of all the things that I'm completely panicking about with this Netflix deal, that's actually the one I'm a little bit least worried about. Because I think once he sees that this is actually working in his benefit, then I think that will influence how they go about it. So, but again, we're at least a year or so away from finding out how they do. All right. Next up, David Cushmore writes, have you been watching any Toronto Maple Leafs game? I watch all the Maple Leafs games. Do you think Toronto make the playoffs? Yes. I don't know how far they'll go, but yes, they will make the playoffs, I believe. Who's your favorite player on the Leafs? Well, I mean, it's same as everybody else is Austin Matthews. But yes, I know I don't talk about hockey a lot on my show because y'all Americans have not been enlightened about how hockey is the greatest sport that God himself created. So I don't want to bore you guys with hockey talk, but if you cut me right now, I bleed blue and white. The Toronto Maple Leafs is my lifelong passion. So yes, follow it quite closely. I just talk a lot about it here on the show. All right. Next up, Christopher Benson sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Christopher, for supporting us on that level, man. And Christopher writes, I just recently rewatched The Revenant for its 10-year anniversary. Oh my God, has it been 10 years? Has it been 10 years since Leo wrestled with that bear? Really? Oh my God, time is flying. Anyway, I just recently rewatched The Revenant for its 10-year anniversary. I know Leo won his first Oscar for his performance in that film, but Tom Hardy was also freaking good as Fitzgerald. Just a masterful performance. I'm just telling you, man, that movie is great. They shot that movie up in Canada, in Alberta, and one of the things the director talked about was they didn't even use any artificial lighting. They literally just used all the natural lighting to shoot it. It looks beautiful. It plays beautiful. It's a great character study, has big popcorn moments as well. It's not in my top 20 all-time favorite films, but it's a masterful film, man. I still can't believe that movie's over 10 years old now, though. That is crazy. I got to do the same thing, Christopher. I got to go back and rewatch it again myself. All right. Harry writes, prediction: Scarlett Johansson will play Samantha Vanover, the Grand Master of the Court of Owls, who controls the organization and its Talon enforcer. That's been a very popular theory. You know, we talked on the John Campea Show yesterday about the fact that Scarlett Johansson is going to be in the Batman 2, and a lot of the questions. I personally am still going for none of the above. I don't think she's going to be a big, high-profile, recognizable character from the comics. I think it's going to be a new character. I could be wrong. Totally could be wrong. But you know what? Out of the pantheon of Batman's rogues gallery, supernatural stuff doesn't work in Matt Reeves's universe. Court of Owls is a very viable option and rich storyline to go down. So yeah, man, I mean, you could be right. I still think it's going to be none of the above, but that's not a bad guess. And it's one that's kind of popular right now. Thanks for that, Harry. All right, next, Ian McAllister writes, this just in from Daniel RPK Patreon. Max Parker Boots is in talks to play Baldur, or if we're talking about the God of War movie or God of War series, and Olafur Dari Olfsson Severance is in talks to play Thor in Amazon Prime's God of War TV series. Interesting. You guys know I am so excited about that series. That series is being showrun by the greatest showrunner of all time, Ronald D. Moore, who did, of course, my all-time favorite show, Battlestar Galactica. He's doing one of Rob's favorite shows right now, For All Mankind. And the fact that he's doing this God of War series, totally prime. And it's going to be interesting how this casting all comes about. Thanks for the update on that, Ian. I appreciate that, man. All right. Next up, we got Mo Reese who writes, with the teams being leaked, well, they're not leaked. If Marvel themselves announce it, it's not a leak. Anyway, with the teams being leaked for Doomsday, do you think there will be a focus on who is on Doom's team? Yes. There were some big names missing during the chair reveal. I feel like a reveal could be huge. Yeah, listen, like Rob said, I don't think Rob is far off. Rob's theorizing that we're going to see Scarlet Witch is going to be on Doom's team, that maybe even Doctor Strange himself, maybe. I disagree with Rob when he says Sentry, and I disagree with Rob when he says Franklin Richards. He could be right, but I disagree. But yeah, I think Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange could be on there. It could be very interesting, Mo. All right. Bob Gray sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Bob, for supporting us on that level, man. And Bob writes, hello, John. I am writing to inquire about your upcoming movie meetup in Ohio. I don't have an upcoming movie meetup in Ohio. I recall you mentioning Cleveland or Cincy as potential locations. I reside in Cebus, I don't know what that is, and would be willing to travel a few hours or less to attend. Yeah, so right now we don't have an upcoming one. I am definitely going to do a movie meetup in Ohio. That's definitely happening. We just don't have it on the books yet because I'm not going to travel that far north during the winter months with the van. So it's going to probably have to wait till, March or April. But once I do, I will pick between Cleveland and Cincinnati, or maybe a city in between. I don't know, but we'll get all that figured out as we get closer to the time. And I will look forward to meeting you when we do it. All right. Thanks again, Bob. And thank you so much for supporting us on that level, man. Really appreciate that, dude. All right. Next up, Mr. Old writes, hi, first time messaging. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate that. Been watching since around Endgame release, and thank you for this community. See all of you at the Burbank community meetup, John and crew. Oh, that'll be good to meet you. Yeah. So once again, in case you guys weren't here at the beginning of the show, our next movie meetup is at the AMC Burbank 16 this coming Tuesday at the 7:10 p.m. screening of what's it called again? Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Again, if you want to participate, we're just going to the movie. So just go to AMC's website, buy a ticket to the movie like normal, and we'll be in there too. We'll all watch the movie together, and then we'll hang out for an hour or so outside of the movie theater. And I will look forward to meeting everybody when we get there. All right. Next up, Aaron C. writes, Netflix already said shorter theatrical runs for Warner Brothers movies. Thoughts? No. Listen, that is a misrepresentation. Steve Sarandos, we read the quote directly, did not say, we are going to have shorter windows for Warner Brothers movies. He didn't say that. He just said we've always been against the big, long theatrical windows, which obviously haven't been around for a while. And he did say over time, we may see it evolve where we shrink the windows a little bit from the current 45-day window. But I don't even think, again, out of all the things I'm panicked about, and I am panicked about a lot of things when it comes to this Netflix deal, that's one of the ones I'm actually panicked the least about. I don't actually think they're going to affect it too much. And again, but I just see people misrepresenting that quote. He did not say, Netflix as an official statement, we're letting everybody know we are going to shorten even the already short theatrical windows. That's not what he said. You could interpret it that way, and maybe it goes that way. Maybe it does, but I don't think it will. I really don't think it will, but it could. All right. Thanks for that, Aaron. Baka writes, Snyderverse, DCEU, and Netflix closer to happening. Yeah, no. Like, first of all, it's already been confirmed. Mike Abdi, Pam DeLuca, James Gunn, they're all staying. But here's the part that I always laughed. Let's say that for whatever reason, James Gunn slept with Ted Sarandos' wife and Ted Sarandos fires James Gunn. Okay? Let's just say that happens. Netflix doesn't want to have anything to do with Zack Snyder. They gave him huge budgets to make these big Rebel Moon movies, and they were the laughing stock of the entertainment world. And I say this as a big Zack Snyder fan. As somebody who, aside from the Rebel Moon movies, I like to love every single one of his movies, except for Sucker Punch. Aside from that one, though, I like to love my all-time favorite Superman is standing right here. Henry Cavill, the most underrated comic book movie of all time. But even if Ted Sarandos, which he's not, they're keeping James Gunn. But even if James Gunn slept with his wife and he fired him, they are not going to Zack Snyder. Not after the total circus and fiasco of everything that went on with his DCEU, but more importantly and more immediately what happened with their Rebel Moon stuff. They're not going back to Zack Snyder. That's why they canceled all of his other Rebel Moon projects. It's just, that's not going to happen. Never was. Besides, James Gunn's, I've got it on authoritative thing. James Gunn's not going anywhere. Now there's DeLuca, now there's Abdi. All right. Next up, Jake Camera writes, if Netflix wanted theatrical, they would have over the decade and a half that they've existed. They'll dismantle Warner and crank out slop for Netflix box office max/fix. Here's the problem with that logic, Jake. The problem with that logic is they've never known how to do it. They've never known how to do it right. Also, I put this forward that you're ignoring. Why would they buy Warner Brothers? No, like seriously. They're spending $82 billion, guys. They're spending $82 billion. Do you think they're spending $82 just to get it and shut it down? Do you really think they're spending $82 billion to do that? No. The reason they're getting Warner Brothers is because it does something that they don't. And it does something well that they don't. It becomes a complementary piece to their existing business and then adds to their business. Listen, when I first thought about Netflix getting it, I'm not going to lie, Jake, that was my mindset too. They're just going to dismantle it and all this kind of stuff. That I admit, at first, when I first heard that Netflix was thinking about bidding for Warner Brothers, that was totally my mindset too. But once you actually look at the facts and you actually think about it, and by the way, I still think this could be a total calamity and a total apocalypse. But you don't spend $82 billion on something bigger than the GDP of most countries on the planet if you're just getting it just so you can dismantle it. No, they got it because they do something well that Netflix doesn't do well. They got it because it's something that can complement their business. So again, could be a total disaster and a total apocalypse, man. But I think when you really look at the scenario, I think the intention, and again, this still could be disastrous, even if this is their intention, but it's clear their intention is they want to get something because this Warner Brothers does something way better than they do it. And it's got a strong foothold in an area they've never been willing to step into before. So I don't know. We'll see how it all works out. All right. Next up, we've got Matan, who writes, IMAX had said in a presentation that Gerwig's Narnia will have rock and roll music. Can we stop with the not your grandpa's ex shtick when reviving a property? Can things be sincere and straightforward again? That's stupid. Dude, they've already done several versions of Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. You're just going to do it all exactly the same again? And by the way, that while there have been times absolutely that approach has not worked, there's also been several high profile examples of when it has worked and when it's worked really well. Look, I don't know what Greta Gerwig is doing with Narnia. I still think the whole project's a bad idea, to be honest with you. I don't know why she's doing it. I think it's a bad idea, but whatever, I'll give it a shot. But you're acting as if like we've been waiting for a Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe forever. We've had several Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movies, and they've always been done a certain way. Why not do it differently? And it's not like this is the first attempt at, like, they've done it. Be creative, take risks, because it could end up being the best thing they've ever done, or it could end up being a disaster. But what's the alternative? Just keep doing it the exact same way that it's been done before? Yeah, I don't buy that. I like to see my artists take some creative risks within reason, but I like seeing my artists take creative risks. All right. Thanks, Matan. Next up, Proudy writes, David Ellison, along with the Saudis, is apparently preparing for a hostile bid to outbid Netflix, and apparently it's a fiduciary duty to consider and accept it. WTF. Here's the problem. They had the opportunity to submit their best bid. They had their opportunity to submit the best bid. There were 2 rounds of bidding. There was a first non-binding round of bidding, and then Warner Brothers said, okay, guys, now give us your best offers. They had an opportunity to submit. They could have submitted the biggest offer, but they lowballed. Netflix put in the bigger offer, and they won. And Netflix is now saying, or Warner Brothers is now saying, bidding is closed. So what I would want to ask David Ellison is, why didn't you just submit the highest bid originally? Like, what were you thinking? Why didn't you just submit the biggest bid? Why didn't you just outbid Netflix at first? Why didn't you just submit a $30 per share bid? Then none of this would be an issue. Now, also, the fiduciary responsibility part is bullshit. What the board has is a fiduciary responsibility to bring options to the shareholders, but the shareholders can vote on in any way they want. They're the owners. The shareholders are the owners, and they can do whatever they want with their shares. If they want to sell it at $27.75 per share to Netflix, they can do that. It doesn't matter if Netflix or if Paramount offers them $80 a share. Although if Paramount offers them $80 a share, I guarantee you they're going to take the $80 a share. But yeah, there's no fiduciary responsibility on behalf of the shareholders. The fiduciary responsibility comes from executives' responsibility to the shareholders. But once you get down to the shareholders, they don't have any obligation to accept or reject anybody's bid. They can take whatever they want. So, again, we'll have to see. I'm sure there's a lot of drama still to play out. We'll see how it goes. All right. Next up, X-Men Superfan writes, why do you think Snyder Bros can't move on? I'm not going to talk about the Snyder Bros anymore. Like, I get all due respect, X-Men fan, but like we've been asked variations of that question 1,000 times, and I'm simply not going to give Snyder Bros any more of my breath. It's been enough. We've covered it 1,000,000 times. All right. Next up, Proudy writes, as part of the deal, Netflix has also bought WB Games. I'm not sure if that's true. Netflix getting into gaming. Again, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying I don't know if that's true. I don't know if Warner Brothers is in the division, the planned split of HBO Max and Warner Brothers Studio and the Discovery Global and the television assets. I don't know where they were going to be putting the gaming. They may keep it with Warner Brothers. They may siphon it off. I am simply saying I don't know. So you say that, but I don't know that that's true. I don't know that it's not true, but I don't know if it's true. So, but by the way, Netflix has been getting into gaming a little bit over the last 2 years. So it might be something to keep an eye on. All right. X-Men Superfan writes, do you think that whiny letter helped in some part to make Warner Brothers go with Netflix? That's a very good question, but I actually think the letter was written because they found out they were going with Netflix. I think the decision had already been made, and I think they caught wind of it. Like, I don't think that letter went out and then all of a sudden they went, let's have a vote right now. And then they voted and then made the announcement. Like, the announcement came so quickly yesterday that I don't think the letter had anything to do with it. My belief is, and I could be wrong, but my belief is that Paramount got wind of the fact that they had decided to go with Netflix, that Netflix put in the biggest bid, and therefore they wrote that letter. So that's how I think it went down. Again, I could be wrong about it, but that's how I think it went down. All right. Matt Saunders writes, could you post that handy graphic, John? Yeah, sure. I'll post it up on social media later. Thank you. Thank you for asking, Matt. I appreciate that. All right. Hector Riaz writes, wrestling fan here. Netflix has WWE under their umbrella and AEW is under HBO Max. When it comes to streaming, how will that affect AEW, WWE? Well, AEW will continue to be on HBO Max because remember, one of the things that came out in all this is that HBO Max will continue to run independently. It'll continue to run as its own entity. So anything that has a deal with HBO Max, i.e. AEW, it'll continue to air there. And if WWE has a contract with Netflix, that'll continue to air there. At least that's how it seems to me. That's how that will work out. All right. Next up, MG writes, hey, John and Rob. Rob's obviously not here for the question period. What if Netflix end goal buying Warner Brothers is to get a foothold in Hollywood and make the industry change to adopt their model in the future? Well, the thing is, it's not their model. Look, at the end of the day, in Wall Street, Michael Douglas said the immortal words, greed is good. Greed works. One of the things that I always trust in is companies' greed. I trust in companies' greed because it makes companies it makes companies predictable. Right? For example, remember when Y2K was going to happen? For those of you old enough, when Y2K was going to happen and everybody was worried that all the computers in the world were going to shut down as soon as the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve of 1999. And remember all that? I was never worried. Do you know why I was never worried? Because I so trusted in the greed of all the companies that would have been affected. I trusted that their greed to make sure they don't lose their bajillions of dollars, that they would make sure all that is working. Now, I say all that because I trust in Netflix's greed. I think when Netflix gets involved actually as a owner and is actually boots on the ground involved as a Hollywood theatrical production company like Warner Brothers, when they see that is their avenue to making more money than what they're making, when they see that creating an amalgamation of the theatrical Hollywood release system with their streaming system and make one complement the other instead of one replacing the other, I'm choosing to trust in their greed that when they see that will ultimately make them more money, that it will influence how they choose to proceed. Now, I could be totally wrong, 100%, but I've never gone wrong when trusting in companies' greed. When I trust in a company's greed, it usually works out the way I think it's going to work out. So I don't know. We'll see. Good question, man. All right, next up, X-Men Superman fan writes again, what Diane Lane performance made you a fan of hers? Oh, I don't know. I'd have to think it. What was that one she did, I think it was Diane Lane, where she was like, she was having an affair with the younger guy. I'm trying to remember the name of the movie, but she was this married woman and she started having this affair with this hot younger guy, and she still loved her husband. If anybody in the live chat remembers the name of that movie, I think that was the first one for me that I mean, I'd seen Diane Lane and things before that. Unfaithful. I think you're right. I think you're right, Theater Room 07. I think that is indeed it. I think it is Unfaithful. You're right. I think that was, and you're right. And yes, Daniel is right. It had Richard Gere in it as well. Yeah. And yeah, I like that one. I think that was the one that I really started, where I actually got note of her name and started paying attention to what her name was. Anyway, thanks for that. And thank you guys for putting in the information. I appreciate that. All right. Alex Smith Superfan also writes, do you think Wonder Woman and Batman are coming soon? Yeah. I mean, but they're not going to come. James Gunn was very clear. They're not going to come until he has scripts that he completely thinks are absolutely solid. But obviously he's had writers and a main writer working on Wonder Woman for a while. And clearly they've had Batman being worked on for a while. So yeah, I think it'll be soon. Soon as in, we'll hear about them within the next year. I think both of them will be in production this year. I think both that Batman movie and that Wonder Woman movie will be in production probably months before Netflix ever takes over Warner Brothers. So I believe they're all both coming within the year. So if that's what you mean by soon, then yes, I think they're coming soon. And all right, guys, as you know, I turned off the super chats a while ago, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take a minute here and take some of your questions. There's still like almost 3,000 of you guys here in the live chat. So do me a favor, if you're in the live chat and you have a question for me, see in the live chat what I just wrote in all capital letters, question, and then write your question. That way I know you're asking me a question. You're not just talking amongst yourselves. Just so you know, I am not going to answer all of them. I'm just going to cherry pick out a couple and answer here before we wrap up here today. Let's see. This one comes to us from Josh, who writes, question, just curious, do you find it annoying or distracting when people get up and walk out of a theater every 5 minutes? Happy to meet you in Orlando from Chicago. Well, thank you so much for that, man. And I'm glad you were in Orlando. Yeah, listen, I don't get annoyed when somebody's got to get up to go to the bathroom. I don't get annoyed when somebody wants to get up and go get a refill of their drink. And this has only happened to me a handful of times in my entire life. But yeah, when you have somebody in the theater who is literally getting up like every 10 minutes, gets up like 15 times during a movie, absolutely, I'm with you. I absolutely believe that that is annoying and they shouldn't do that. All right. Zelda Master writes, are the Vikings screwed for the next long while? No, but they do have to fix their quarterbacking situation. Letting Sam Darnold go was one of the stupidest things they ever could have done. I never understood why they let Sam Darnold go. You get 13 wins and you drop the guy. Why? Because he had 2 bad games. I never understood that. It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, but I think they have the right infrastructure. I think they have a good coach. I just think they need to fix their quarterbacking situation. Let's see here. Revolving Productions writes, odds we get Tom Hardy's Venom in Secret Wars. I'm going to go a big 0. I think Tom Hardy is done with the character. By the way, it's not impossible. It's not impossible. But my guess is, I think he's done. I think he said he's wrapped up. He's now done. That part of his career is now done. So I think the options are 0. But who knows? We'll find out. Let's see here. Mike writes, question, do you think Endgame will retake the #1 box office after its re-release next year? I don't, because let me bring this up here quickly. Let me go to Box Office Mojo and let me go to the all-time worldwide charts, top lifetime grosses. Okay. Let me see if I can get this up on screen here. So, where we're sitting right now is Avatar is sitting at 2.9 billion. Avengers Endgame is sitting at 2.7. Let's call it 2.8. So if Marvel does a re-release of Avengers Endgame prior to Doomsday coming out, can that re-release make $123 million at the box office? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think if it was a bit closer, maybe, but I don't see it getting $124 million. I mean, just too many people have seen it too many times. And it's not like it's been, oh my God, it's been 20 years since I've seen that movie in theaters or anything like that. Yeah, my guess is going to be no, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. All right. Let's see. Next one here. Andrew writes, what is your favorite sports movie and why don't we see more Canadian-based sports movies? Well, I think the reason we don't get more Canadian-based sports movies is because Canada is only really known for one sport. And it's hockey. And there have been some hockey movies. But America, who is the biggest movie territory in the world, Americans aren't really all that into hockey. Because again, they have not been enlightened to God's sport. That being said, a couple of my all-time favorite movies are Slapshot, obviously. Best of the Best. I love Best of the Best. Eric Roberts, James Earl Jones. I love that movie. It's such a guy movie. It's a grrr movie. I love that one. And then, why am I freezing on the name of it? I talk about this movie all the time. Guys, help me out in the live chat. The hockey movie starring Russell Crowe. Mystery Alaska. That's what it is. Mystery Alaska. I love that movie. That movie is so good. If you haven't seen it, give it a shot. It's really fantastic. All right. I'll take one more here. Let's see. All right. We'll go with Ta. I don't know how to pronounce the rest of it. Which movie will be better, The Odyssey or Dune 3? Okay. I think they are both going to be amazing. They're both going to be amazing. I cannot wait for both of these movies. But Dune 2, I believe, is the best movie made in the last 10 years. Again, you don't have to agree with me. It's all subjective. Nothing wrong if you don't agree. But for me, Dune 2 is the single best cinematic achievement in the last 10 years. And because of that, my guess is that Dune 3 will be the better film. But I am a little bit nervous about it because I don't like the book it's based. I don't think Dune Messiah is a very good book, to be honest with you. I just don't. But it's Denis Villeneuve. He made Dune 2. I think it's the greatest movie of the last 10 years. So my guess is it's going to be Dune 3. But what I have no doubt about is that both are going to be awesome. Both are going to be awesome. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait for both of them. They're both going to be incredible. And all right, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and making our little show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in the questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us involved with the show, thank you guys so very much for your support. All right, guys, I hope you all have a marvelous weekend. Keep your guys' eyes on the channel, of course, over the weekend. I hope to see a lot of you guys at the movie meetup in Burbank on Tuesday. And guys, don't forget, help us make a family's Christmas special. Look at the top of the description of this video. You'll find a link to our Amazon Adopt a Family wish list. The only thing that's left is $10 Amazon gift cards. We just want as many people to go in there and donate those $10 Amazon gift cards. All you got to do is just go in, buy it, and Amazon will automatically just send it to us. So go use that link. Help us make a Family in Needs Christmas a really, really special one. Guys, thanks so much for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.